Abena Karikari. Currently a PhD student, final year at the Institute of African Studies, University of Ghana, Legon. My background is medical anthropology from doing my MSc at the University of Edinburgh. At the time, it was called Anthropology of Health and Illness. When I did my national service following my undergrad here in Legon, I did it at the Noguchi Memorial Institute for Medical Research in the epidemiology department. And a lot of people are surprised because my background is in science at all. My first degree was in sociology with English, but epidemiology deals with the human aspect of health. And so I got the opportunity to do my national service there, and I had a very close and good relationship with my boss at the time. We are still in close contact, and that's Dr. Ahimfo. So he told, I was looking for programs to do because being the daughter of academics, it was you know, the next step for you to do after undergrad is masters. There's no way you end at undergrad, and so I was looking for master's programs, and he suggested that I look up medical anthropology. I was already interested in anthropology from my sociology background, but then so I started researching medical anthropology, and I was fascinated because it's a field that combines my interest in humans and society with my interest in reproductive health. And so I looked up a number of programs. I looked at Amsterdam, Manchester, but the Manchester program was only social anthropology. And then I looked at Edinburgh because at the time my brother was doing his master's in Glasgow at the University of Strathclyde. But I didn't necessarily want to be in the same city as him, so I looked at Edinburgh. And so I applied to all these programs, and I got into all of them. And then the reason why I was particularly interested in Edinburgh, aside from the fact that my brother was there, is there was a scholarship I could apply for as well. And so I applied to the program, I got in, and then I waited to see if I would get the scholarship. Unfortunately, I didn't get the scholarship. But my parents saw that it was something I was interested in and wanted to do. And they are always very encouraging of education and, you know, pursuing further academics. So they said they would pay, and they did. And so that's how I ended up at the University of Edinburgh. I ended up booking a ticket for my birthday, and so I took British Airways, and when I arrived at the airport, because my brother was in Glasgow, he had taken a train to come meet me. So I actually did not at that moment go into Edinburgh. We immediately took a bus that took us to the train station and went to Glasgow. So I was with him that weekend, and you know, he had a couple of roommates who were my seniors from secondary school, Wesley Girls High School. And so they took me shopping, you know, back to school, you know, blankets because it was cold, even though it was supposed to be, you know, end of summer. And so we did all that. And then on Sunday, so I think I arrived on a Friday, I can't remember. But then, so Sunday, because registration was supposed to start on Monday, my brother took me by train to Edinburgh. And I don't remember my first impressions because everything seemed very quick. So he took me to my flat, and I had forgotten there was an option when we're choosing residences to either get a blanket from the school or you bring your, and I think I neglected to check for blankets. So that first night I slept with all my sweaters covered because it was cold, and this was end of summer. I was like, hey, so what will winter be like? So anyway, that first night was okay, and then the next day I had a roommate from Thailand who was also in the same school as me, the School of Social and Political Science. And being two foreigners in a new city, we decided to go together. And so we had our pictures taken for the registration, and then I think she needed to do some registration at her department, and then I had to do mine as well. And so we split. And personally, I'm very bad with directions. Anywhere I go for the first time, I get lost. And because that first night was cold, I decided, okay, let me go and buy a duvet and an extra pillow, because I think the pillow in the room was very flat. So, and that day, it wasn't raining in particular, but it was very windy. I was trying to figure my way back to the flat because it was just walking distance, but I seemed to be going round in circles, holding this duvet, this pillow, my backpack. I mean, if there were cameras following me that day, people would really have laughed, you know. And so what ended up happening was I was at the bus stop trying to get my bearings, and all of a sudden a gust of wind just grabbed one pillow. And I just watched the pillow going. And luckily somebody managed to grab it and then gave it back to me. So that is one memory I think if I live to 150, I'll never forget. And that is the picture I have in my mind about Edinburgh. Very cold, windy, but the people are also very helpful. I did the MSc in Anthropology of Health and Illness, and at the time, the program director was Dr. Stefan X. And I won't lie, the program was a bit of a culture shock for me. Not just the program, but having done all my schooling in Ghana, you know, undergrad here, and then going straight into a master's degree where you are supposed to share your own views. It was a bit strange for me. I mean, if you've grown up in Ghana, you know how it is. What teacher says is law, and you, the student, you just nod along. So being in this space where, and it was a relatively small class, I think, were we 12 in all, but I think there were some who were part-time. So I think we were 8 who were in the same, you know, year that I was. And we were from all over the place. There were they 2 Americans, either 1 or 2 Americans. There were 2 Dutch ladies. We had 1 Scottish lady. And then, who else was in this class? Then there was Ben, who is British, but not Scottish. But I was the only black student in the class. But it was a very nice mix. Yeah, very diverse, everybody was very welcoming, nice, helpful to one another. But I found that in the first few classes, I was sort of trying to find my footing, because you don't want to say something and it's wrong, even though it's a master's class where nothing is technically wrong. And so it took some getting used to for me. But Stefan X was, I mean, he's one of the coolest lecturers I've ever had. He was so friendly, very approachable. If you had any questions or difficulties, you could reach out to him. There was even one time he took us to the cinema to watch Contagion. Oh. And because it was a medical anthropology class. And so when COVID hit, I was like, oh my God, we saw this in 2012. I took one course with him that was, what was it called? Magic, Science and Healing. You know, like just the name got me intrigued, and I said, I have to take this course. And so what it had to do with is looking at traditional forms of healing, you know, African, indigenous forms of healing. So that's the magic aspect. This is a white lecturer who is, you know, showing you that my side of the world is not necessarily what is best or right, but showing that there are multiple perspectives that you can take into consideration when you are looking at health. We all had different interests in the class. but we also as a class used to have this Sunday potluck where one person would host everyone in their house. Everybody brings something small to eat. But I think I went once or twice because I was spending my weekends in Glasgow with my brother. But that was very fun. And because we all didn't really have anybody in that city, it was a good way for us to sort of get to know each other and also form some, lasting friendships. And so I really loved that class. I really loved the people in it, our lecturers. And there was one particular class I took, which in hindsight has spurred or led to the thesis I'm currently working on in my PhD. And I wrote a paper on body commodification. And I think that was my first A in the master's program because I enjoyed doing that particular paper so much. In that particular paper, I looked at organ trafficking, different forms of body commodification, slavery, and then moving on to modern day where, there's in reproductive health, for example, there's artificial, assisted reproductive technologies, which involves, taking sperms or eggs that either you store and use for somebody else or your own. And so I found that very fascinating. The Edinburgh Main Library was my favorite place to study. It's so huge and you can find practically every book you need. And one thing I also liked was, when the weather is is cold in Edinburgh, it's very cold. And so during the winter, especially when it gets dark early and, you don't want to leave your room, but the internet is so good and the library system is so well, organized that you can access books from your room. You can connect to the library and still be doing your work in your room. And so I really like that. And they had a cafe downstairs. So whenever, sometimes when you're in academic mode, you don't want to leave the library. And so I could stay there from like 8 till 9 p.m. Like 8 in the morning till 9 p.m. And when I need to eat, I'll just go to the cafe, get something and go back. There was a Facebook group created for those of us who were about to come to Edinburgh before we got there. And so we got to interact with each other, get to know, oh, you'll be in my program, oh, you'll be in my hall, And through that, I made a very good friend. Her name is Sika. She's from Zambia, but at the time she was coming from Switzerland. And it's like in a sea of mostly white faces, we're like, oh, my fellow black girl. And so we became very, very close. So we actually started checking, oh, when are you arriving, like when we would arrive in Edinburgh, how soon we could meet and all that. And so Sika and I were inseparable, but we were doing different programs. And so we went for different lectures, we made other friends, but for social stuff, we mostly did it together. And so Freshers Week, we planned to go for one of the Freshers parties. When we got there, we realized it was mostly undergrads. So we're like, what are we doing here? And so we had a few drinks and then we were like, oh, it's undergrads, let's just go. So yeah, we left, but then we used to meet up for lunch once in a while, and then with my class members and even sometimes with our program director, sometimes he would want to catch up with us, see how we were doing with the program, what's going on with us. And so we would meet. There was a pub across from the university, I've forgotten the name, but we used to go there for drinks after class as well. And I didn't really do much partying till I think Christmas. And that's when the Edinburgh Hogmanay Festival is held. And there was the Christmas market as well, near where did they do it? On Princess Street, yeah. So there was an ice rink, there were all these, it's like a fair, so there's food, there's games, shopping, and it was just amazing. So for the first time in my life, I did ice skating. When my boyfriend came to visit, I took him ice skating and it was comical. Can you imagine? Two Africans from, hot Ghana trying to skate on ice. It was hilarious. I had flatmates. How many were we? Let me remember. There was Ari from Thailand. There was Dawn from Taiwan. There was what was her name? From Azerbaijan. There was one lady from Azerbaijan. There was another lady from the US. And then there was me. I think we were 5 in the... No, and then there was a 6th person, Lydia from Russia. So very United Nations in the flat. And so what we used to do was, and Lydia came up with this idea that for our birthdays, we would have something small in the flat, and then the flatmates would come together and get a gift for the birthday person. So that was one of the ways that we really got to know each other, even though we were all doing different programs. Whenever I tell people I went to Edinburgh, it's like, you went to the Harvard of Scotland. Yeah. And yes, they have that status. I mean, they've been around since the 1500s, But I find that apart from academic excellence, they also look at your other strengths. So it does help to be academically good to get in, but it's not all about academics. It's about what else you are bringing to the table. When I was there was when they first started this thing called Innovative Learning Week. And so it's like a week out of the academic calendar where there are different activities going on. There are a series of talks by some of the lecturers, by some of the student organizations. There was even one activity I joined in that was related to the anthropology of food, where everybody had to bring food from their home country. And just guess what I took? Jollof. Ghana jollof. Wow. I took jollof and it was a hit. They finished it. And I took King's Bite chocolate as well. Wow. Innovative Learning Week was a way for us to meet other people from other departments, experience another side of learning that did not necessarily involve sitting in the classroom and being lectured to. And so that was something that I wish every university everywhere would take up, because when the academic calendar is like 12 weeks and it's just, day in, day out, sitting in the classroom, day in, day out, sitting in the classroom, it can get a bit tedious. So when we had that 1 week break in the calendar, it was very refreshing. And I made some new friends out of that as well. Edinburgh has some of the best bookshops in the world, A lot of used bookshops, new antique bookshops, and of course, as a bookworm, I went to as many as I could. And in actual fact, that is where I must say I revived my love of reading. So when I was coming back, I think I had to pay extra luggage because of the books I was carrying. In terms of food, there are a lot of options, but if you're looking for African food, you will struggle a bit. Because I remember the African shop, that was closest to me. You had to take about 2 buses. And so I said, oh, forget. I'll just eat my potatoes and pasta. Yeah. I used to think you had to sort of box yourself in. Like you can only be one thing, or even in academia, I thought you could only, like if you're doing literature, that's it. That's it. Yeah. Or if you're doing medical anthropology, that's it. But I realized that, and this was through my interactions with some of my lecturers and then some of the students as well, you can take, inspiration from anything and anywhere and bring it together, and it's even more beautiful than, just going in one straight line. And so in my current thesis, for example, it's medical anthropology, but I'm doing an analysis of fictional representations of infertility in addition to my social media ethnography. Here in Legon, during undergrad, I was in one of the programs that had the largest numbers, over 200 students in a class. So you don't really get that one-on-one thing that smaller classes provide. And so even though I've had some brilliant lectures, for my undergrad, I didn't experience that one-on-one relationship with an academic mentor till I went to Edinburgh. And seeing how, these are people with PhDs, professors, and you're calling them by their first names. Yeah, and they are chatting with you about food. I remember my program director was telling me about how his son couldn't eat gluten. And so he had actually researched online and discovered that his son could eat fufu. Huh. Fufu is gluten-free. Oh. So he asked me about it. And he said they tried it once and he really enjoyed it. I was like, this is a lecturer who is telling me about his personal life, being so free enough and also open enough to learn about the culture his student is coming from. And it was very heartwarming. And I feel like that's the kind of lecturer I would want to be to my students, someone that students can reach out to, can talk to about anything, from food to relationships to, So I definitely, my experience at Edinburgh has had a huge impact on my life, just that one short year. I went on a tour of the city with my boyfriend when he came to visit, and I feel like when you are there, like in academic mode, nothing will push you to do all these tourist things, but I would urge anyone going there, explore the city, be open to new experiences. But one thing I would advise is make sure you take a lot of warm clothes because it's cold. Summer in Edinburgh, actual summer where you will feel warm like you're in Ghana. I feel it lasts only 1 week. The rest of the year is varying degrees of cold. If you're coming from a hot climate, just have that in mind. But don't let the cold stop you from exploring. Ghanaians are over helpful, especially when you are a foreigner. Oh, over helpful. Tell them you are trying to find somewhere. Oh, they'll take you themselves. So there's that similarity, The Scottish people are also very helpful. I had one instance where I was missing. This lady stopped what she was doing and walked with me to where I was going, So we have that in common, Ghanaians and Scottish people. And if you go online and you ask about people's experiences in Scotland, is so similar. They point to how warm and hospitable the people are. And for Ghana too, it's the same. One thing I love about Scotland in general, and Edinburgh in particular, the people are lovely. They are so friendly, helpful. If you are taking a bus and you don't know where you are going, the bus driver will take his time to explain to you which bus you need to wait for or which direction you should be going in. And sometimes even you will find other passengers whose time you are wasting in a way. They will be willing to help you find your way. So I absolutely love Edinburgh, and I'm always telling people if there's anywhere else in the world I would live apart from Ghana, it would have to be Edinburgh. I have always been looking for opportunities to go back. And so when I started the PhD here in Legon, which is being funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation. There was a portion in my scholarship that pays for a conference. And there was an Edinburgh conference on African Studies about to happen. And I said, oh my goodness, I have to go for this conference. And so I sent in an abstract and it was accepted. And I was like, look, I spent the year before the conference just, preparing and being excited. And I think I sent in the abstract in 2018, yes, and the conference was 2019, June 2019. And I had a baby in February 2019, so initially I was thinking, oh, but the baby is so small, how can I leave him? But my mom was like, no, come on, you have to go. You don't have to stay for a month, And so I went for a week and I was just so happy being back in Edinburgh. And, coming back, doing my PhD, meeting old faces and meeting new people. It was so much fun. And I went with colleagues from here as well. And so it was a lot of fun showing them places that I had been to while I was doing my master's, even though I got them lost a number of times. My sense of direction. So they started teasing me that, oh, Edinburgh must be like, in Harry Potter, the staircases used to move around. So they said, okay, maybe Edinburgh is the city that moves around, because I'll say this thing is here, next thing we know, I'll say is here. I feel like I found myself in Edinburgh. Like, I discovered who I truly am, who I truly wanted to be. And when I went to Edinburgh, I had permed hair, but I had done braids, rasta, like we do when we travel. And when I took it off, and then I wanted to do my hair again, and I was like, well, part of it was the cost. It's hard to find an African salon in, so that was the first thing. And so I was like, oh, let me just cut this off. So I cut my hair in Edinburgh. I did the big chop in Edinburgh. And when I did that, I felt so free, And there was no going back. From there, I grew my hair out, afro. I was natural. I used to, do twists, and eventually I ended up locking my hair. So that evolution or transformation began in Edinburgh. And another very obvious thing is I discovered or rediscovered my passion for reading, which has led to me, blogging about books. And I had a blog then. So I also started, writing more. And my course in Edinburgh is what eventually sort of inspired the thesis I'm doing for my PhD as well. So Edinburgh had a huge impact on me. It had a huge impact on my life. I would like to thank the University of Edinburgh and my former department, the School of Social and Political Science, and particularly my program director, Dr. Stefan X, who is still there. He made my time there so, memorable. And if I hadn't had the time I had, the experience I did, I wouldn't have pursued medical anthropology, It would have put me off. But because of how they taught me, how, they made me feel like, you can do your own thing, it really spurred my interest. And I'm also very thankful to the friends I made there, my class. We're the class of 2012. And my flatmates, and the city of Edinburgh. Amazing. Yeah, it's such a beautiful place. Whenever I hear anybody is going there, I get so excited for them. I wish I could pop in their bags and go with them. I will be finishing my PhD by July this year. And so I want to pursue an academic career, teaching, researching. And so if the University of Edinburgh will have me, I would love to go back.